Today, I have prepared a gift for you. It's a very special gift. I've spent a long time working on it. It's the gift of my correct opinions. See, over the last semester, I've had an oil painting class, and in this class, I would sit for 2.5 hours, twice a week, painting with my headphones on. And do you know what I was listening to in those headphones? I was listening to the audiobooks of all 14 of L. Frank Baum's original Oz novels. And now, I'm going to provide you with my ranking for them. Also, let's get this out of the way. My shirt has a plague doctor on it, and it says, "But did you try leeches?" And I got it from my dad. Anyway, starting off, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is obviously the most quintessential origin of most Oz media. It's the most well-known of any of the books by far, popularized the franchise by a whole. It follows, I'm sure you already know this, but I'm going to provide a quick summary of all the books anyway. It follows Dorothy, average girl from Kansas, as a cyclone carries her in her house to the distant land of Oz. She lands in Munchkin country and is informed there by the Wicked Witch of the North that she has accidentally crushed and killed the Wicked Witch of the East, who has been oppressing the Munchkins. Dorothy expresses her desire to go home, and the witch recommends that she follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City to ask the Wizard of Oz to send her home. She obeys. Along the way, she befriends a Scarecrow, Tin Woodman, Cowardly Lion. They make their way to the Emerald City, where the wizard tasks them with killing the Wicked Witch of the West and bringing him her broomstick. After being captured and accidentally killing the witch with a bucket of water, Dorothy and her friends go back to the wizard, who admits that he doesn't actually have any magical powers. Then the Good Witch of the South, Glinda, casts a spell to send her home. Now, this general plot is obviously common knowledge, although some aspects are frequently overlooked, including the fact that the witch's slippers were silver. Dorothy doesn't meet Glinda at the beginning. Instead, she meets the Witch of the North. And the tinted spectacles made the Emerald City look more green than it actually was, so they had to put on these spectacles before they went into the city because, quote-unquote, it would dazzle their eyes if they didn't and make them go blind, when in reality it was just tinting everything green. Additionally, there are more threats that the Wicked Witch sends after Dorothy and her friends before sending the flying monkeys, including the wolves, the crows, the bees, and enslaved Winkies. So, obviously, this book is S tier. Do I even need to explain it? It's S tier, baby. It's the first book. It's iconic. It's the birth of the IP, and we love it. Next, second book is The Marvelous Land of Oz. So this is much lesser known than the previous novel. A lot of people don't even know that there were books past the first novel, but this is still probably the second most famous book of the series. Several plot elements of it were present in Return to Oz, along with other plot points from Book 3. Now, this follows an orphan boy named Tip, who escapes his guardian, the witch Mombi, who sucks, along with a sawhorse and Jack Pumpkinhead, a stick guy with a pumpkin for a head, that Mombi animated and brought to life using the powder of life. Together, those three go to the Emerald City, and then that's overtaken by General Ginger, who is leading an army of young girls. Let me see. So Tip, Sawhorse, Jack, and the Scarecrow, who was king of the Emerald City before he was overthrown by Ginger, they go back to the Tin Woodman's palace, and the Wogglebug, H.M. Wogglebug, T.E., highly magnified, thoroughly educated, he joins them along the way. He's there. Let me see. So they ally with the field mice, who help them retake the royal palace. They, hide inside of Scarecrow. The surrounding Emerald City is still occupied, but they've got the palace. And now they need to get out of the palace. So they construct this sofa with wings and the mounted head of a gump, animate it using the powder of life, and ride on its back to escape the palace and flee to where Glinda is at, down in Quadling Country. Glinda tells them about the Princess Ozma, who was the rightful ruler of the throne before the wizard came along, and then Mombi admits that Tip is actually the disguised Ozma who doesn't remember being a princess. So, Glinda then transforms Tip back into Ozma, who restores the throne of Oz, reclaims Emerald City. Love this book. It is iconic, it is whimsical, introduces us to the trans icon Ozma, and my personal favorite character of the entire franchise, Jack Pumpkinhead, my darling. I loved it. I think the plot was pretty coherent, although a lot of readers, including me, missed Dorothy. Still, it goes in S tier. Okay, third book, Ozma of Oz. So, several plot elements from this book are also incorporated into Return to Oz. It's kind of a blend of the second and third books. Although, some things are omitted, such as the Hungry Tiger. He's gone entirely. Princess Langwidere in the movie is kind of like combined with Mombi's character. We'll get into that later. And the initial setting, instead of being like in the land neighboring Oz, she just goes to Oz initially. Now, in the book itself, Dorothy falls off of a ship headed to Australia during a storm. She was headed there with her uncle, along with the chicken Billina. She washes up in the chicken coop on the shore of Ev, which is a fairy country neighboring Oz but divided from it by the desert. They're saved from the Wheelers by a clockwork man named Tick-Tock, who tells him that who tells them that the ruler of Ev, where was I? The ruler of Ev died after selling his wife and children to the Gnome King. Yeesh. They visit the castle of Princess Langwidere, who has many interchangeable heads, and has unhappily become the ruler of Ev. She doesn't want to be, but she's the only one still alive, so there she is. Let me see. She imprisons them because Dorothy doesn't want to give up her head. Not cool. However, Princess Ozma and her allies cross the desert using a magic carpet and save those three? Yeah, it's three of them. Save those three on their way to conquer the Gnome Kingdom. So, Dorothy, Billina, Tick-Tock, they have joined the army of Oz and entered the Gnome Kingdom, where the Gnome King Roquat sucks, informs them that he has turned the royal army of Ev into ornaments in his collection. Each member of the group can make 3 guesses as to which ornaments are the disguised prisoners, but if they guess incorrectly, they will also be turned into ornaments. Ozma agrees to these terms. Every single person but Dorothy and Billina goes through this. Everybody's turned into ornaments. But Billina was hiding under the Gnome King's throne and accidentally overhears him talking and gets information that all of the ornaments that they're looking for that are transformed people, all of those are green. So she lets Dorothy in on that. Dorothy is able to free everybody back, and they also figure out gnomes are afraid of eggs, so they use this to their advantage to free everybody and steal the Gnome King's belt, which Dorothy uses to return to her uncle back in Australia, who has been worried about her this entire time. Now, this is overall a pretty good one. I do really love Dorothy and Ozma's relationship as they finally get introduced, and it had that little touch of macabre, kind of dark world building that I really love to see in my Oz novels. The eggs thing with the Gnome Kingdom. I don't get the eggs thing, but it's not the most out there part of Oz lore, so it is what it is. Overall, I give this A tier. Let me see. Okay. Number 4, Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz. So this is kind of the point where we stop seeing any full adaptations of the novels from here on out. Aside from a few exceptions, these are generally all overlooked by most modern Oz media. They just focused on the first book primarily, maybe the second book if you're lucky. I can see why, because honestly, book 4 is definitely a lot weaker and more difficult to follow than its predecessors. L. Frank Baum hadn't really planned on continuing the series after book 3, but he ended up writing more due to its popularity with readers and due to financial pressures. So, the story opens with Dorothy in California riding in a horse-drawn buggy with her new kitten Eureka and her cousin Zeb, when a sudden earthquake splits open the ground and they fall into the earth, like down to the center of the earth, and they land in the kingdom of the Mangaboos, a group of vegetable people who accuse them of causing the earthquake. They're people made of vegetables, and we don't get nearly enough explanation for that. So then, as they're getting yelled at about this, the Wizard of Oz also floats down and lands with them there in his hot air balloon. He kind of dazzles the Mangaboos doing this magic trick with 9 tiny piglets that he just inexplicably has on him. He, pretends to combine them and then, juggles them and all that. Hey guys, it's me again 1 week later, coincidentally wearing the same shirt. I'm editing the video, and I realized that I fully just lost a segment where I discuss books 4, 5, and 6, so I'm gonna fill in the gaps here again, I guess. Okay, we left off. He does tricks with the 9 small piglets. This makes them angry, and they get driven out of the kingdom into another valley of people who are invisible because they eat a fruit on the trees that grow in the valley in order to hide from the bears that also live in the valley who are also invisible. So they get out of there quick. They climb the Pyramid Mountain and exchange gifts with the Braided Man. He manufactures holes that you can put in surfaces, flutters that you can apply to a flag to make it wave, and gosh, what else was there? Oh, rustles for silk dresses. Then they head into the land of the gargoyles, where everything, including the gargoyle inhabitants themselves, are made of wood. Nothing makes sound, so the travelers use their sensitivity to loud noises in order to move past them. They get through a tunnel of baby dragons, get past them, and reach a dead end. Then Dorothy reveals that Ozma looks at her with her magic picture every day at 4 o'clock, and when the time comes, she'll, make a gesture signaling her to save them with the Gnome King's belt. Sorry, bird outside. Let me see. That happens. Travelers get transported to the Emerald City. The Wizard and Eureka like to stay in the Emerald City. Dorothy, Zeb, and Jim, the horse who pulled the buggy, they all get sent back to California. The majority of this book doesn't even take place in Oz. It's kind of just a bunch of unrelated character concepts that Baum, threw together into a collection. There's no character arc, there's no consequences, it's just a cabinet of curiosities. It's a bunch of interesting ideas, but they're very disconnected, and they all just get magically rescued through no actual work of their own. I thought it was still pretty entertaining, but it does not hold up nearly as well as the previous 3, so I put it in C tier. Okay. The Road to Oz, number 5. This one opens with Dorothy and Toto. They're sitting at their farm in Kansas when the Shaggy Man, he never gets any other name. He refers to himself as the Shaggy Man, nothing else. He comes up and he asks for directions to the nearby town of Butterfield. Dorothy thinks he seems nice, tries to show him the way, but as they keep going along different roads, they end up getting lost. And along the way, they are joined by another lost kid, Button Bright. He's just sitting at the side of the road, digging a hole, and they're like, we should take this guy with us. So they do. They also bump into Polychrome. She's the daughter of the rainbow. She's a sky fairy who accidentally fell off the rainbow and ended up stranded on the Earth. So these group, they travel on and they find Foxville. The king of Foxville asks for an invitation to Ozma's upcoming birthday party, and then he's like, Button Bright, I like you. I'm gonna turn your head into a fox head. And Button Bright is like, I don't like this. And he's like, that's too bad. Goodbye. And so they head out, they go to Dunkyton, where King Kikabray also asks for an invitation, and then he turns the Shaggy Man's head into a donkey head. Not a fan of that either. They meet the Musicer, who is a guy who just produces music by breathing. They just kind of pass him by, nothing really happens. And the Scootlers, who take off their own heads and throw them at people. Then they get to the edge of the deadly desert, and the Shaggy Man summons his friend Johnny Do-It. He comes and builds them a sand boat and lets them cross safely. They get welcomed on the Oz side by Tick-Tock and Bellina. They get taken to the Truth Pond. Button Bright and Shaggy Man have their normal heads again. Yippee! The book ends with a lengthy description of Ozma's birthday party, describing the guests, the entertainment, how the wizard creates large bubbles that carry the guests home, and then Dorothy and Toto get transported home to Kansas by the Gnome King's belt. So, overall, not as strong as the first 3, better than the previous one. The characters have, an actual concrete goal for the journey, and, some people complained that the scene of Ozma's birthday party was too drawn out, but I thought it was, a pretty satisfying payoff that the characters had to actually work for. So, solid B tier. Okay. Alright, Book 6, The Emerald City of Oz. Emerald City of Oz is actually one of the later books that gets an adaptation by a later piece of Oz Media, which is the 4th season of the 1986 anime, Oz no Mahoutsukai, and it follows the events of this book. I have not seen it, so I can't, speak to the anime's accuracy, but the story in the book opens with Dorothy at home. She's describing her adventures in Oz to Uncle Henry and Aunt Em. They think she's making up stories, as kids do. But they're being faced with the threat of their farmhouse being foreclosed because of all the damages from the tornado in the first book. Dorothy convinces Ozma to bring her and them to live in the Emerald City permanently, and so as she, that happens, and she goes out with her aunt and uncle to give them a tour of Oz. As this is happening, the Gnome King Roquat is in his kingdom and he's scheming. He's angry and he's boiling up a plan, and he's scheming, and he wants to take over the Emerald City and get back his magic belt. So he sends General Guff to go out and find allies from the other countries surrounding Oz. He goes and talks to the Whimsies, the Garlywogs, and the Phantasms. The Gnome Army digs a tunnel for all of the 4 of them to pass under the Deadly Desert and then, come out of the ground inside the Royal Palace in the Emerald City. But Ozma figures out this is happening through her magic picture. She casts a spell to fill the tunnel with dust so that as they come out, the soldiers are all very thirsty and impulsively drink from the nearby Fountain of Oblivion, which erases their memories. Ozma uses the Gnome King's belt to send all of the soldiers home and prevent further invasion. Glinda casts a charm over Oz that makes it invisible and inaccessible to all other countries. So this book finally reconciles the problem of, getting Dorothy back to Oz and then back home over and over and over again. She just stays there permanently now. This is also the first Oz book to, switch between a main plot and a subplot. Baum had intended this to be the last book of the Oz series, which you'll see happen a couple times. And he actually included an epilogue saying, Dorothy would no longer be able to, tell him about the stories happening at Oz because of the charm that Glinda cast. Overall, I put this one in A tier. It's pretty solid. Good plot, good characterization. And then book 7. I got to most of this in my footage, but I'll just recap the beginning. It follows this munchkin boy named Ojo. He's poor, and he lives with his Uncle Nunky. Alright. And they live off this tree in their backyard that grows loaves of bread. You're gonna see that in a lot of the later Oz books. The L. Frank Baum loves to just have trees that grow stuff that does not grow on trees, such as loaves of bread. But once they pick their last loaf of bread, Uncle Nunky and Ojo, they're like, alright, well, we gotta head out, we gotta get some more food. So, they go to see their neighbor, the magician Dr. Pipt, who is about to complete a batch of the Powder of Life, which he plans to use to animate this patchwork girl that his wife created to be a servant. She's just this life-size doll made of, a patchwork quilt with, yarn hair and button eyes. She's fantastic. Anyway, he had previously used the Powder of Life to animate a glass cat named Bungle, who is extremely prideful and brags about her brains all the time. Ojo sneaks a bunch of different types of brains into the head of the Patchwork Girl before she's brought to life. This results in a very crazy and variable personality, and she names herself Scraps. But immediately after Scraps is brought to life, Dr. Pipt accidentally knocks some bottles off the shelves. They shatter on his wife and Uncle Nunky, and they petrify them to stone. Not awesome. Dr. Pipt sends Ojo out on a quest to gather components for a potion to restore them back to life, and begins preparing another batch of the Powder of Life as a backup plan in case Ojo doesn't get all the stuff. Ojo, Scraps, and Bungle, they go out and they encounter the Woozy, who is this kinda, it's described as the size of a goat, and very, very tough skin, and it's all rectangular. It's kind of it's made of blocks. But, the Woozy has one hair growing out of its tail that they need for the recipe, but they can't pull the hair out, so the Woozy just agrees to travel with them and figure it out later. Then, let me see. Oh yeah, then they pass through this forest of a bunch of huge plants that, like, scoop them up and trap them in the leaves, but they get freed by the Shaggy Man, because apparently they don't get you if you whistle, and he was whistling. He takes them back to the Emerald City. They encounter Scarecrow along the way. Him and Scraps have a little meet cute. And then in the Emerald City, Ojo picks a 6-leafed clover and gets arrested for it because that's illegal, but Ozma pardons him, so it's fine. They continue to search for the remaining ingredients. Along the way, they reconcile a war between these two people, the Hoppers and the Horners, and then that allows them to collect a gill of water from a dark well in one of their caves. After this, they go to the Tin Woodman's palace, where Ojo collects a drop of oil from his joint, but the Tin Woodman forbids them from collecting the wing of a yellow butterfly. At this suggestion, they travel back to the Emerald City. Ozma reveals that Dr. Pipt is now forbidden from practicing magic because it's actually illegal for anybody to practice magic except Ozma, Glinda, and the Wizard, because the Wizard is now under Glinda's tutelage, learning actual magic. Those are the only 3 who can do it, nobody else is allowed, so Dr. Pipt, cut off. But it's okay, because the Wizard of Oz restores Unk Nunky and Dr. Pipt's wife back to life. The plot of this book is mid-range. We've seen better, we've seen worse, and their work doesn't really pay off. It's just a fetch quest that kind of gets conveniently solved by an unrelated force at the end. But the characters really carry this book. I love Scraps, I love Ojo, and it's very entertaining to see the ways they interact with other characters. This also introduced a love interest for the Scarecrow and one of very, very few female artificially animated characters. And even though y'all know I'm a Tin Crow truther for life, I still think him and Scraps are very cute. Beyond that, Baum kind of had to retcon the ending of the last book, like cutting Oz off from all communications by saying that, oh, I'm talking to Dorothy via telegraph, and he kind of avoids dealing with the whole enchantment thing by only involving characters who are already in Oz rather than introducing somebody else into Oz. So, overall, this would be B tier, I think. Let me see. Tea break. Number 8, TikTok of Oz. TikTok of Oz follows Betsy Bobbin, a girl from Oklahoma, very similar to Dorothy in age and in character. She and her pet mule Hank wash ashore in the Rose Kingdom neighboring Oz near Ev, and are rebuked for trespassing there by the gardener. But it's okay, because the Shaggy Man comes along and charms the gardener using his love magnet, and they leave along with the newly plucked Rose Princess Ozga. Not Ozma, Ozga. Canonically, they're cousins. I don't know how, but it works. Simultaneously, Queen Anne Soforth of a small nation within the Winky Country sets out with a small army to conquer Oz. The Shaggy Man reveals that he is searching for his brother, who has been kidnapped by the Gnome King. Then they meet Polychrome, who fell off her rainbow again, get it together Polychrome, and TikTok, who has already been trounced by the Gnome King. Together, they all march back to the Gnome Kingdom, and the Gnome King tries to prevent them from reaching there by redirecting them through Rubber Country and then drops them through a hollow tube to the other side of the earth. Very far fall. They land in a different fairy country ruled by, Tititi Hoochoo, who sends them back through with a dragon named Quox to help them conquer the Gnome King. Quox makes him forget all his magic and casts him out to the surface using half a dozen eggs. Then the royal steward Kaliko, who previously exhibited kindness toward them, becomes the new Gnome King and directs the Shaggy Man to the Metal Forest, where he finds his brother, who has been placed under a spell to turn him ugly and is like wearing a bag over his head and refuses to take it off. But then a kiss from Polychrome turns him beautiful again. Shaggy, his brother, Betsy, and Hank all return to Oz, while Polychrome goes back to the sky, and the army of Oogaboo also goes home. Despite being named after him, this book has very little to do with TikTok. Ostensibly, it's based on a play called TikTok of Oz, and it boldly introduces a plethora of characters that we, the audience, have absolutely no connection to. It lacks the character strength of the previous book, and its plot is not strong enough to make up the difference. However, I do enjoy its focus on the Gnome Kingdom. See, I'm in this Wizard of Oz Discord server dedicated to fans of the extended books, and we talk about Kaliko so much. We talk about the gnomes, we talk about Kaliko. He was technically introduced in the third book, but he wasn't named, he was just referred to as the Royal Steward. But he is absolutely adored. We talk about him, we write about him, we make art of him all the time. And honestly, we talk about the Gnome Kingdom more than the actual Land of Oz in there, so the focus was appreciated. Anyway, it goes in C tier. Now, The Scarecrow of Oz. This book is very unique because it introduces two characters from Baum's other series of children's novels, these being Trot and Cap'n Bill. These characters are very charming and charismatic, and they get brought to Oz by a whirlpool while they're sailing. They are brought to an underwater cave where they eat berries to turn tiny, get carried over the sea by a bird-like creature called the Orc, then they eat a different type of berry to get big again. They encounter Button Bright, out doing whatever, and feed some birds the berries to make them big enough to carry them across the desert into Oz. Once they leave, the Orc goes off to try and find his home. So now Trot, Polychrome, Cap'n Bill, and Button Bright find that they are in a section of Oz called Jinxland, which is separated from the rest of the country by a mountain range. They meet a gardener boy named Pon, who is the son of the previous King Fierce before the current King Cruel seized the throne. Him and Cruel's niece, Princess Gloria, are in love, but she has been sought after in marriage by a wealthy older man named Googly Goo. We hate Googly Goo. Everybody hates Googly Goo. King Cruel and Googly Goo pay the witch Blinky to freeze the princess's heart, and to prevent Cap'n Bill from relaying his witness account of this event, she turns him into a grasshopper. At this point, Glinda has read about these events in her Great Book of Records, and she sends the Scarecrow to go help them. He meets the group, and he goes and demands that Cruel give up his throne, but he promptly gets tied to a stake. He's about to be burned until the Orcs come back and they use their wings to blow out the flames and apprehend the Jinxlanders. Scarecrow uses the magical powders that he got from Glinda in order to threaten Blinky into undoing her spells by shrinking her in size, after which Gloria reunites with Pon and takes her place as rightful ruler of the kingdom. Everyone else returns to the Emerald City to celebrate after this. Now it's worth mentioning, there is a shortened and illustrated version of the story narrated by the actor who played Scarecrow in the 1939 MGM movie. I highly recommend it. It's very fun, very charming, he puts energy into it. So overall, this book is an absolute banger with a solid plot and characters, and honestly, I'm gonna be bold, I'm putting it at S tier. It's so good, and you have no idea how badly the quality is about to drop. Ringy Tink and Oz. This book beat me 6 ways to Sunday. It was so painful to get through, and the general consensus is that this is the worst of the original 14 Oz books, most likely because it was supposed to be an unaffiliated story until Baum was pressured to write another installation of the Oz series and had to clumsily bring back in the Oz setting at the last minute. So this was not intended as an Oz book and got retconned as one. Water break. So, this follows Inga, the prince of the royal family of the island of Pingaree in the Nonestic Ocean, which surrounds the Land of Oz and the neighboring countries. Their main export is pearls, and they are very successful. Despite having no army to speak of, several years ago they were able to successfully fend off an attack from the forces of the nearby islands Regos and Koragos. Inga's father, King Kittycut, shows his son a hidden compartment in the throne room where he has placed a bag containing 3 magical pearls. The blue pearl grants super strength, the pink pearl protects you from harm, and the white pearl gives advice. Excuse me. He explains that these pearls allowed his father to defend Pingaree from that attack many years ago, and he tells Inga to keep them a secret. Shortly after this, Pingaree is visited by King Rinky-Tink of Gilgad, who laughs way too often and way too loud at his own jokes, and he rides on the back of a grumpy talking goat named Bilbil. Rinky Tink is described very frequently using super uncomfortable and unnecessary fat-phobic language, and if I took a drink every time Baum described how fat this character was, I would be in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. While Rinky-Tink is visiting, Pingaree is attacked once again by the forces of Regos and Koragos. King Kitty-Cut does not have time to grab his magic pearls. Rinky-Tink, Bilbil, and Inga are able to hide on the island and discover that they are the only ones left who were not captured. Inga retrieves the pearls, hides them in his shoes, and he uses the blue pearl's strength to row Rinky-Tink's boat to Regos. Upon arrival, Inga easily defeats King Goss, who flees with his army to the neighboring island where his wife lives. However, while sleeping, Inga takes off his shoes and he accidentally loses them with the blue and pink pearls inside. They get found by a charcoal burner who brings them to his daughter Zella, and then she goes and meets Inga in Queen Kor's palace the next day when she comes to sell honey. Her and Inga swap shoes. He uses the powers to free the enslaved people of Pingaree, but his parents are still hidden. Queen Kor and King Goss have captured them and are taking them to the Gnome Kingdom. Inga, Rinky-Tink, and Bilbil arrive there after the king and queen have already left, and Kaliko, the present ruling Gnome King, admits that he is holding Inga's parents captive, but he refuses to release them because of his loyalty to King Goss and Queen Kor. He allows them to stay the night there, but attempts to kill them with various traps in the morning, failing at every turn and eventually giving up. Side note. This is very out of character for Kaliko. Hashtag not my Kaliko, he would not do any of this. They only made him Kaliko because he needed to fit it into the timeline, and at this point Roquat had already been defeated, so he couldn't make it Roquat again, but this was written as an unaffiliated character. This isn't Kaliko. This isn't him. This isn't you. He would not do this. Anyway, at this point, Dorothy has heard about what's happening. She shows up to yell at him. Kaliko immediately caves. He releases Inga's parents and they travel to Oz, where the wizard reveals that the goat Bilbil is actually the magic prince of Bobo Land, who was placed under a transformation. How mysterious. Like I care. Anyway, everybody goes back to Pingaree. Rinky-Tink has to go back and run his kingdom, even though he doesn't want to, because in case you forgot, he's the king of Gilgad. This book is the only one I felt justified in giving D tier. It was a battle. It was a battle to get through. I had to keep pausing while I was listening to it and kind of just paint in silence for a while until I got bored and had to decide to go back to the torture. But Book 11, The Lost Princess of Oz. We are so back. The last book was very difficult to get through, but after that, this book, it felt like a reward. It felt like dessert after a disgusting dinner. It immediately opens with a very strong plot premise. Ozma has disappeared overnight without warning, along with the Book of Records, the magic picture, and the wizard's magic tools, which would have enabled them to locate her. Everyone is puzzled as to what could have happened to her, and they form search parties to look throughout Oz. The party that the book mostly focuses on is Dorothy, Trot, Betsy Bobbin, Button Bright, Scraps, and the wizard, who head into Winky Country. We are then introduced to our secondary story, which is, there's this town called the Yips in Winky Country that's in an isolated corner that hasn't really met anybody else. And there's this woman from the Yips called Cake, who goes to the Frogman, who is like the wise guy, not the wise guy, but like, you know, the smart guy, the advisor of the town. He's this giant anthropomorphic frog who wears human clothes and pretends to be really intelligent when he's not really that bright. But she goes and she tells him that her magic dishpan that she uses to bake cookies has been stolen, and they go out to search for it. Then we go back to Dorothy and her friends, who have been informed by the ruler of Herku that a citizen of that country, Ugu the Shoemaker, has recently left to go live by himself, and he may be the culprit of the recent thefts. The party goes to Ugu's castle, where they join Cake and the Frogman, along with 2 toy bears to confront Ugu. They escape his magical obstacles, and Dorothy uses the Gnome King's belt to turn him into a dove, but he then uses the magic dishpan to teleport to Quadling Country. The pink bear, who is bear is kind of like an oracle. It's like if you pull I think it was pull a string? It was either pull a string or like wind a thing on his back and he would like tell you the truth about something. You could ask him a question. But he tells them that this golden peach pit that Button Bright had in his pocket from when he wandered off earlier was actually Ozma, and so the wizard opens it with his knife, releases her trapped inside, and they find the magic stolen tools, the book of records, and the magic picture. They go back to the Emerald City. Meanwhile, Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, who were searching in Quadling Country, found the dishpan where Ugu left it, brought it back with them, and then Ugu later approaches Dorothy, where she sits in a garden of the Emerald City. He apologizes and asks for forgiveness. She does forgive him and asks if he wants to be turned back into a human, but he wants to stay a dove. Now, overall, I found this book very strong. I think the Frogman is interesting and a compelling character, and the writing is, in my opinion, some of the best in the series. I did find Dorothy's convenient use of the Gnome King's belt to get them out of trouble to be kind of a letdown, but besides that, I think that the mystery is well constructed. I was also very, very happy to see more appearances from Scraps and Betsy, who hadn't been involved much since the books in which they were introduced. Easily, this goes into A tier. Okay, the final stretch. Tin Woodman of Oz. We've been blessed again with yet another banger. This follows a new young protagonist, Woot the Wanderer, who is a Gillikin boy. Hello? Uh-oh. Hang on, my screen recording just stopped. And we're back. Okay, sorry about that. Tin Woodman of Oz, number 12. This follows a new young protagonist, Woot the Wanderer, who is this Gillikin boy. He just wanders around the countryside and eventually finds the Tin Woodman's palace in Winky Country. He is taken in, given a meal, he expresses awe and surprise at the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman's appearances, and he asks why the Tin Man came to be made of tin. Doesn't ask the Scarecrow why he's alive. I'm dead serious, we never get an explanation why the Scarecrow was alive in any of Baum's books. He just is. Anyway, Tin Woodman tells Woot that he used to be a normal Munchkin man who chopped wood for a living. His name, Nick Chopper. Great. He fell in love with Nimmy, who was stuck working for the Wicked Witch of the East. To prevent him from marrying her, the witch cursed Nick's axe to keep chopping off the parts of his body, and each time that happened, he would go to his friend Clip the Tinsmith, who would make him a prosthetic, and this continued until he was made completely of tin. Nimmy insisted that she still loved him even as an entirely tin man. How romantic. However, one day he gets caught in the rain while chopping wood, gets rusted in place until Dorothy and the Scarecrow find him and he joins them on their adventures, and after that, he has not been back to see Nimmy ever since. So sad. Woot suggests that he returns and marries her. The Tin Woodman agrees, admitting that he doesn't love her, but it is still his duty to make her happy. Woot and the Scarecrow join him on this journey, but they agree to keep it secret from the friends in the Emerald City for the sake of privacy. They head into Gillikin Country. They are trapped in the forest by the Loons, a society of inflatable balloon people who attempt to prick them with thorns. They escape after Woot uses the thorn to pop many of them, and make their way into the Yoop Valley, where they are then held captive by the giantess Mrs. Yoop, who has already transformed Polychrome into a canary. Polychrome just cannot catch a break. Anyway, she transforms Scarecrow into a straw-stuffed bear, the Tin Woodman into a tin owl, and Woot into a green monkey for some reason. Pack it up, Beast Boy. They were able to escape in these forms by stealing her magical apron and make their way to Munchkin Country, where they visit Ginger at her farm, because she's chill now. Actually, it's fun fact, in the book, canonically, Scarecrow goes to Ginger's house on a semi-regular basis to get his face repainted, and they're actually pretty good friends, which I think is very sweet. Anyway. They visit Ginger at her farm. Ozma and Dorothy meet them there and transform them back into their natural forms, so they continue on the journey. The group encounters another rusted Tin Man, this one called the Tin Soldier, because he carries a sword rather than an axe, and he introduces himself as Captain Fighter. Captain Fighter is also a very popular figure in the Wizard of Oz Discord server. People love him there too. He was a Munchkin military captain who courted Nimmy after Nick seemingly abandoned her, and then the witch cast the exact same spell on his sword that she did on Nick's axe, making him gradually cut off all his limbs and turn tin as well. Now, on the day that they were supposed to get married, he also got caught in the rain and became rusted until just now when the group freed him. And the two Tin Men agree that they will allow Nimmy to choose between them who she wants to marry, how kind, and they decide to go and visit Kuklip the Tinsmith. There, they find that Kuklip has kept several of their amputated human parts intact, including Nick's entire head, who is very rude. Because that's not disturbing. That's fine. That's cool, guys. The tinsmith then reveals that he used some of their body parts to assemble an assistant that he named Chop Fight, who has fighter's head and a tin arm, and just is kind of Frankensteined together from both of their parts without their knowledge or consent. That's cool, Clip. That's real cool, man. His name is Chop Fight, which is so original. He goes, oh yeah, no, Chop Fight headed east. He probably won't be an issue. You definitely won't run into him. Oh, I'm sure. They head east, they find Nimmy's house at the foot of Mount Munch, and they accept the help of a rabbit to use its tunnel to go under the invisible wall to reach the house. And there they find that Nimmy Ami has married Chopfit. She has married the amalgamation of both of her ex's parts, and is happy with him, and doesn't want to leave or marry either of the tin guys. She's like, nope, I want to stay right where I'm at. Please get out of my house. So the group departs and heads back to the Emerald City to tell their friends about the events. The Tin Soldier agrees to work for Ozma, Whoop keeps on wandering around Oz, Polychrome goes back to her rainbow, and the Tin Woodman goes back to his palace with the Scarecrow because they still live together. Hashtag Tin Crow for life, baby. A tier. The Magic of Oz. It's a bit of a step down from the previous book, but it's still pretty good. It introduces us to an isolated group of munchkins living on the top of Mount Munch, one of whom has discovered a new method of magical transformation by saying the word Pirzaquixel. I want you to guess how that's spelled. His son Kiki Aru finds the hidden directions for pronouncing this word and memorizes them so that he can transform into a hawk and explore other lands. He ends up stealing a gold coin from somebody in Ev, and then runs into the former Gnome King Roquat. Always Roquat. Also, by this point, he's renamed himself Ruggetto because he lost his memory in Book 6. But he's still mad, still scheming, still doing all that. Okay, he joins forces with Roquat/Ruggetto. They try to conquer Oz. We switch to the other main plot, which is Dorothy and Trot trying to figure out what they want to get Ozma for her upcoming birthday. After asking around for some advice, Dorothy decides she wants to bake Ozma a cake and have tiny monkeys inside that will come out and dance and serve slices of cake to everybody. It sure is an idea. Trot and Cap'n Bill decide to give her a magic flower that gets described to them by Bungle the Glass Cat that, it changes into a different type of bloom every couple of seconds. It just, it keeps changing flower species over and over continually. So that's pretty sick, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll go give Ozma that. So, let me see. Dorothy travels with the Wizard, the Cowardly Lion, and the Hungry Tiger into the Forest of Gugu in Gillikin Country to try and find some monkeys to put into the cake, and Trot and Cap'n Bill follow Bungle to the island where the magical flower grows. But as soon as they step onto the island, Trot and Cap'n Bill realize that their feet have grown roots down into the ground and effectively trapped them in place. That's terrifying. So they send Bungle to go fetch the wizard for help. Since she's glass, no roots grow on her, and she can just walk along the bottom of the lake. Meanwhile, Ragetto and Kikiaru have transformed themselves into Limoneags, that's a lion-monkey-eagle hybrid, to cross the desert and then lie to the animals in the forest of Gugu, saying that the Oz people have declared war on them. And they're like, hey, we can transform all of you animals into humans and all of them into animals so that you can enjoy their human accommodations. And the animals are like, we'll form a council and all think about it. Dorothy, the wizard, the lion, and the tiger all arrive at this council while they're discussing it. And so Ragetto recognizes them, and he tells Kikiaru to transform them. So Dorothy turns into a lamb, the wizard's a fox, the lion is a munchkin boy, and the tiger becomes a rabbit. And then he also turns Ragetto into a goose, I guess, so that he won't be implicated. He deserves it. I don't care. Let's see. Okay, so the wizard in his fox form secretly witnesses Kikiaru turning monkeys into giant human soldiers, and now he knows the secret magic word. He uses it to turn his friends back into their normal forms and change Ragetto and Kikiaru into nuts. He changes the monkeys back to their normal form, and in exchange, they agree to perform for Ozma at her birthday party. At this point, Bungle reaches them, tells them what's going on with Trot and Cap'n Bill, and leads them back to the island where the two are stuck. Thankfully, there's a scene where they figure out that they can wish for different kinds of fruit from the flower, so they have not starved to death. Yay! Let me see. Okay, the wizard uses the magic word to change them into bumblebees so that they can fly off of the island and go back to safety. Hi, it's me again. It happened again. Anyway, Cap'n Bill. Upon becoming human again, he uses a plank of wood so that he can walk safely onto the island and carry home the magic flower on the lion's back, and the book ends with another, shorter this time, description of Ozma's birthday party. Kikiaru and Ragetto have their memories erased by the Fountain of Oblivion. Overall, pretty decent book. I didn't find it quite as compelling, but I still enjoyed it, and it was pretty fun seeing Bungle the Glass Cat again. My question is, how many times do we need to wipe the Gnome King's memory before he stops being evil? Cause like, we're at 3 strikes by this point. So, I hope he's done. Anyway, B tier. Alright, this is the final book, Glinda of Oz. This book is different from all of the others in the sense that it wasn't completely written by Baum. He actually died while writing it in 1919, so the editors at the publishing company Riley and Lee had to clean up the manuscript and publish it under his name in 1920, posthumously. Book begins with Ozma and Dorothy making a pretty normal visit to Glinda and her palace in the Quadling Country. Dorothy happens to read in the Great Book of Records that the Skeezers and the Flatheads, these two unknown groups from the northern edge of Gillikin Country, they've declared war on each other. Ozma and Dorothy are like, we can't let this happen, and so they make a journey there to prevent this war from happening. They escape a group of giant purple spiders and receive help traversing a steep valley by the Mist Maidens, who carry them across, and then they arrive at the mountains where the Flatheads live. They figure out they're called the Flatheads because their heads are literally just flat from above their brow, like, around. So they don't have any room for a brain in there, and they carry around their brains in cans in their pockets. How normal. Their leader, who is, Supreme Dictator shortened to Sudik, they explain that the rival... Do you guys mind? I'm trying to record a video over here. Anyway, the Sudik explains that their rivals, the Skeezers, have actually forbidden them to fish in the nearby lake, and they transformed his wife, Queen Aurora, into a golden pig. No good. Ozma and Dorothy find the Flatheads pretty disagreeable, so they go to the Skeezers to hear their side of the story. And they figure out the Skeezers live on the lake on a large island that's covered in a glass dome. They're ruled by Queen Coo-ee-oh, who is also a dictator and very, self-absorbed. She doesn't care about anything else. She learned magic from these 3 sorcerers called the Adepts that she actually transformed into fish who now live in the lake. The Skeezers forbid fishing in the lake because if any of these 3 magical fish are killed, the queen will lose her powers. When the Flatheads attack, the island retracts its bridge to the shore and then completely submerges underwater, trapping Dorothy and Ozma there. Queen Coo-ee-oh leaves the island in a submersible boat along with a crew to operate it and confronts the Flatheads. The Su-dic uses a potion to transform her into a diamond-studded swan as revenge for transforming his wife, but then in the process he accidentally spills the poison he wanted to use for the fish onto the shore, making it useless. So it's a lose-win. The Flatheads retreat. Queen Coo-ee-oh is so absorbed in her new appearance that she's absolutely apathetic to the people now trapped in the submersible and on the underwater island, because the mechanisms are operated by her magic and nobody else knows how to do it. Dorothy and Ozma call Glinda for help. She goes... oh gosh, okay. Glinda goes to help them, along with the Wizard, the Shaggy Man, Uncle Henry, Betsy Bobbin, Trot, Cap'n Bill, Ojo, Button Bright, the Lion, the Tiger, the Wogglebug, the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, Jack Pumpkinhead, Tick-Tock, Scraps the Patchwork Girl, Bungle the Glass Cat, all came out of nowhere lightning fast and then kicked Chuck Norris and his cowboy ass, and it was the bloodiest battle the world ever saw, with civilians looking on in total awe. Basically, every recurring Oz character gets a cameo in this scene. So, they're all headed up to Gillikin Country. The three magic fish in the lake talk to one of the skeezers trapped in the boat. His name is Ervic, and they ask him to take them to Rira the Red, this sorceress living in the area. The three adepts trick Rira into turning them from fish back into their normal forms. Then they meet up with Glinda and her crew, and they all raise the island again. Yippee. Queen Coo-ee-oh's servant Oryx is chosen to be the new queen, with Ervic as the prime minister. Then Glinda enchants the Flatheads to all have normal round heads with brains inside, also restoring Queen Rora to her normal form from the pig. The Flatheads are renamed the Mountaineers because their heads aren't flat anymore, and the Skeezers and them both swear loyalty to Ozma. Queen Coo-ee-oh is still a swan. I guess we're just leaving her that way. So, I assigned this C tier. It's not... I don't know. It doesn't have the pizzazz. This marks the end of the 14 original novels written by Baum, and I feel like they really went out more with a fizzle than a bang. I mean, I still enjoyed it well enough. I would have really liked to see more of Glinda and learn more about her backstory, considering the book was named after her, and we barely see her. It's just Dorothy and Ozma again, which... I'm always happy to see Dorothy and Ozma. I mean, at least it's characters we're already attached to, but come on. Where's Glinda? Anyway. This is my tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you disagree with my rankings, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have a great day/evening. Keep being creative, keep making things about the Wizard of Oz. Yes.